Hello everyone, GM. Welcome back to another episode of Overpriced JPEGs. This is the second episode of Blockbuster, which we are airing today. This is a series we launched last month in which I speak to my good friend John Rogers, former Disney exec, about all things Hollywood, media, entertainment, and blockchain. Last month in the first episode, John and I really walked through his thesis around NFTs and Web3 when it comes to Hollywood in particular, but let's call it entertainment generally. And in this episode, we dive deep on one major Hollywood studio in particular, John's alma mater? I don't know if that's what I call it, but Disney. So John worked at Disney for many years. And in this episode, we really talk about what John thinks Disney should be doing, what their opportunity is in the metaverse space, let's call it, what they have done, what they've signaled they plan to do, and what Bob Iger retaking over as CEO means for their future next generation storytelling plans, which is what Disney has historically called their seemingly metaverse program. So this is a great one. I think people are really going to enjoy it. If you enjoyed last episode, this is a good build on top of last episode. We reiterate some of what we laid out last month, but we really go deep on Disney in particular. So I hope you enjoy it. Before we hop in, though, a couple of administrative notes. First, the OPJ Tour is now live. You can go to opjtour.com to reserve your seat for our very first live event, which is going to be in Miami on March 30th. An interview with Julian Holguin, the Doodles CEO. If you have a Doodle or if you have an OPJ NFT, you may go on, register for the event, opjtour.com, and come hang out with us. It's going to be a great event. So March 30th, a week away, not even, or well, I guess a little over a week away, depending on when you're listening to this. So go on to opjtour.com and register, please. And we launched our OPJ NFT index on the Overpriced JPEG Substack today as I record this, which is Tuesday, March 21st. So if you want to see our top 10 rankings for this month for NFT projects, go to the Overpriced JPEGs Substack and subscribe. All right, folks, thank you so much. And we're going to hear a word from our amazing sponsors before we dive into this episode. I am so excited to announce that this year, Overpriced JPEGs has partnered with OPENSEA, the world's leading NFT marketplace built for everyone, creators, collectors, noobs, and experts alike. I'm an OPENSEA user because they have the best selection of NFTs and a truly inclusive view of the ecosystem, supporting 8 chains and 8 global languages. I trust the systems they've put in place to keep the space safe, like copyright protection, malicious URL detection and removal, robust verification, and more. It's why they are the place to buy, sell, and create NFTs. That's right. You know OPENSEA, you use OPENSEA, but did you know that OPENSEA now has drops? New exclusive projects launch every week from top projects and creators, and you can check them out now using the link in the show notes. They also recently introduced self-serve drops, which is in beta, and allows creators to launch their projects right on OPENSEA. This drops product gives creators access to tools like rich storytelling drop pages, multi-chain support, and drop mechanic customization. The full launch for self-serve drops is coming this spring. So check out the upcoming drops on OPENSEA right now using the link in the show notes and own what moves you. You'll also be supporting the show in the process. Let me introduce you to a brand new company that I could not be more excited about, Web3Sense. A Web3 analytics platform that combines on-chain data with social media insights to give you the deepest, most meaningful intelligence into any NFT community. I have tested other analytics platforms out there, but Web3Sense has the most comprehensive capabilities I've seen in the NFT ecosystem. They apply sophisticated data science to wallet histories to determine behavioral patterns and help shape predictive analytics. In other words, they can tell you which Twitter accounts are actually the influencers in your space. And they can tell you what resonates most within a community by looking at what other communities token holders are involved in. The number of use cases here is virtually unlimited. So whether you're a trader, creator, institution, brand, agency, I promise Web3Sense has data that you want to see with the deep and actionable insights that you need to build, analyze, grow, start, whatever you want to do within the NFT space and in terms of building a business and a community. Now, they are still in very early days, so they're eager to connect with the community. So if you're interested in learning more about what Web3Sense can do for you and your business, and you should be, go and fill out the very short form linked to in the show notes, and someone from their team will reach out with more information and an opportunity for a product demo. Trust me, you won't regret it. John Rogers, welcome back. Always glad to be here for another episode of Blockbuster.
Yay, the second episode. I'm excited to be back. On with the show.
This is one that I'm really pumped for. It's something that I feel like, I don't know, I feel like you and I do on our own anyway. Like, you give me all your thoughts on these big studios and how they're doing. And I'm really excited to bring it to, let's call it the public, because you just have such interesting insights here. So today we're starting with a bit of a deep dive on Disney, which is your alma mater. Is that what can we call it? Your alma mater?
I'm an alumni.
An alumni, a Disney alum.
Yeah, they don't have a formal Disney alumni function, but they really should.
I feel like that would be incredibly valuable. In any case, we are doing a deep dive on Disney here, and I just want to start by having you level set folks who aren't in Hollywood, who maybe don't know. You know, I'm sure everyone knows what Disney is, but like, give us a sense of what is Disney's magic, for lack of a better term, right? Like, what is their core competency, and really take us through that early 2000s period where it felt like they really had this resurgence under the first era of Iger's leadership.
Sure. So let's rewind to 2005. I think that is the pivotal year. That's the year that Iger became the CEO of Disney, succeeding Michael Eisner, who had been the longtime CEO before him. And what Iger really coming in that year, and what that year signifies, is a couple of things. It's the shift from what had been the prior paradigm in Hollywood, which I'd call the Blockbuster era, pun intended. But we had transitioned from the Blockbuster era to the franchise era. And really, Iger becoming CEO is the big milestone. The Disney Pixar acquisition, which he led immediately after, soon after, was the next big milestone. And obviously later on down the road, the Marvel and Lucasfilm acquisitions. And why that's a really pivotal moment is that no one else really followed Disney down that step. That he either saw it or was more willing to make the cultural and difficult changes, the reorganizations necessary to make that paradigm shift. And, you know, blockbusters are great, huge. They have sequels. They drive massive attendance at cinemas, very, very profitable movies. Lots of examples we could cite. But the franchise era was different. It was seeing that really what we call differentiated content, highly branded content was going to become more important, focusing more resources into fewer properties. And the other studios didn't follow. And so the net result of that was that over the course from, say, 2006 to 2012, Disney went from being the number 4, even arguably the number 5 of the big 6 studios at the time, to being the number 1 big 6 studio. Now, ultimately today we have a big 5 studios because Fox no longer exists. It's now part of Disney. So you can even say the ultimate expression of that success was Disney swallowed Fox. Or was able to swallow Fox. So what we saw there was, okay, this big industry shift. It was an architectural innovation. It required massive reorganization. Disney went through, and I was there for all 3 of these, 3 really big reorganizations that were very painful, lots of jobs shed, lots of new responsibilities shifting around, lots of leadership changes. I had 4 different chairmen over my time at Disney. And that's what comes with those architectural innovations. And so because Disney was able to make that change and that transition first, they were able to move from a number 4 position to the number 1 position. And that's what happens at times of architectural innovation, that smaller players can catch up, startups can all of a sudden become leaders, and laggards can become the leader. And that's what happened at Disney.
And we talked about that a bit on the first episode, and then you wrote an awesome piece for the Overpriced JPEGs newsletter. Got to shout it out, which really lays this out too. If you're more of a visual learner and want to read this, I think you did a great job of kind of spelling out what happened during that period of architectural innovation and why it's relevant. And of course, it brings us into today, where I think you see blockchain obviously as yet another architectural innovation, which we talked about a little bit last time. So talk to us about the blockchain and the opportunity here specifically for Disney, and what their opportunity is kind of relative to even some of the other players.
Yeah. Well, to begin, and I laid this out in the article, and I think we'll have future episodes of Blockbuster dedicated to each of these, but every single step of the media value chain is potentially disruptible with blockchain technology. And that's even the potential impact by scale and scope is bigger than any architectural innovation before. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a decade-long transition, just like the whole Blockbuster to franchise transition took about a decade. So it's the beginning of that transition, but it's also the beginning of that opportunity.
And what's so important about that, if I just pause on that, is because, and we'll get into this later, right? But this is where you have been often critical of so many of the deals that have been made up to this point, because it feels like a lot, to the extent that Hollywood gets this, it's often in the lane of merchandising, of like, let's do a deal where we kind of license these characters to be slapped on an NFT, and it's a merchandising deal. And and the stump you're really stumping is like, no, think so much bigger, think at so many different points to the creative process should this be integrated. Yeah,
exactly. Another way to think of it is that the studio, and this is traditional studios all the way back to the very beginning of Hollywood, have been very driven by the immediate dollar in front of them. And it's really been one of their biggest weaknesses. And I think one of the successes my team had at Disney was we started saying no or turning down short-term dollar opportunities for the longer-term, bigger opportunity. But studios, just the nature of how they're run, the nature of the industry, the culture, it's always about the quick, immediate buck. Get that dollar out of the pocket and move on. And what this is saying is that this next transition is beginning to happen, and that these deals that we've seen to date, particularly some at Disney, but other studios as well, have been around that short-term buck. Get that dollar today. And they're missing the bigger picture 2 or 3 chess moves ahead. And so my argument, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about like what would I do if I had Bob Iger's ear? It's really about setting up, okay, let's look at the chessboard 3 moves ahead of us right now and get positioned for that opportunity and not focus around these short-term, make a buck today kind of moves.
And Iger seems to be somebody who has historically operated that way. I mean, that's, you're saying like, I mean, you were given the mandate essentially from him or from the chairman or,
Chairman, yeah.
Yeah, in those days of Disney to set up a department that essentially did that, right? So like it seems like Bob Iger would be somebody who understands that.
Absolutely.
Maybe more so than any of these other studios.
Yeah, absolutely. He was, I reported up through the head of marketing at first and then up directly to the chairman after the first of those reorgs. And definitely it was with Iger's backing. And in multiple cases when we said, hey, this short-term opportunity is not in the best interest, we need to think long-term. In just about every case, someone petitioned or protested to Iger directly about that decision. And every single time, I can't think of a single time where he did not have my team's back and say, nope, that's the right call. That's the long-term opportunity is the right call. Because there's this tension of a manager in, say, the video game group, which no longer exists at Disney, mistake, or at the consumer products group, wants to hit their quarter, right? Bonuses are tied to that, hitting your quarter, revenue goals are hit to that. And so the incentive of growing a brand long-term in the future is not there for them. And that was my team's check on the system was, no, we're going to focus on that long-term strategy. And Iger is very much of that mindset of think the big picture 3 years down the road, not the small picture or the small picture 3 months down the road.
I mean, I see so many parallels just to NFT projects where, and I talked about this with Luca Netz a little bit of Pudgy Penguins, of like, there's that challenge of building a public where sometimes what the holders want or the thing that could be flashy or cool to holders in the short term really comes at the expense of the bigger long-term opportunity, and having the discipline as a project founder to be like, we're going to prioritize the longer term opportunity and not just kowtow to maybe what looks like a cool short-term opportunity. So lessons there for all of us.
It's one of the reasons that we talked about David Horvath and his newsletter last time, and it just has gotten better and better as it goes. So seriously, if you're listening and you haven't subscribed to David Horvath's letter right now, I have no stake in that. Sign up for it, and also sign up for Overpriced JPEGs newsletter while you're doing it.
Well, you know why you should do both. Well, I was going to say David's going to write a guest writing for us in a couple of weeks, so we're going to have a David. I talked to David 2 days ago, I think, and John, you and I haven't even caught up about that, but he's gonna come on the pod. So, and
his entire perspective is exactly that. Like, you're growing a brand over a decade, and you're looking at a decade time horizon, even at the pace of Web3. You're not looking at, hey, we're going to get our feature film deal this year and we're going to have a movie out in 2 years. Like, it's not going to work that way.
Let's circling back to this, like the particular opportunity in front of Disney here. You have some strong feelings about this, about like how Disney should be approaching this. So I want to hear, first of all, how you think they should be approaching it. We'll do hardcore prescriptive stuff at the end, but like, let's start high level and then let's get into what they've done and sort of what path they seem to be on right now. Yeah.
So to begin, and these are like, I guess I'll call these my 2 big ideas around Disney. I guess one is an idea and one is more of just a statement. But so the first is, no company on the planet, as far as I can see, has an opportunity the way Disney does when it comes to blockchain. blockchain. Now, I'm biased. I'm an exec there. It's my home. I love the place, but still trying to bring some kind of objectivity to it. I still can't see any company that has the same sort of opportunity. Second, what is the pathway for Disney onto the blockchain? And this has been somewhat controversial, but my feeling is very much strongly that it's through the theme parks. It's not through Disney Plus. It's not through the movie studio. It's a theme park. It's a theme park on the blockchain. And the mental model that we should be thinking about that we would expect from Disney, and if I were inside Disney, what they should be thinking of is we're building a theme park on the blockchain. And why that came up was actually about 2 years ago. Even before when I was working in Web3, Bob Chapek, in one of the first statements ever from a Disney exec about Web3, Metaverse, the space, said that the big opportunity they saw was Disney Plus. And an analyst named Julian Alexander tweeted, no, it's the theme parks. And I kind of tweeted back saying, absolutely, it's about the theme parks. And I get Chapek made that comment because it was everyone was announcing their chief metaverse officer, and metaverse was the word that all the investors wanted to hear from the executives of their companies. So I get why he said it at that time, but to position it for Disney Plus was wrong. I thought that it's bigger than Disney Plus. Disney Plus is a major component to it, but it's not the reason for its existence. It's bigger than that.
So this is fascinating, and I want to dive in. For anybody who maybe doesn't know, I think a lot of people probably do, but there's a lot of Bobs in this story. That's the first thing to know. A lot of Bobs in Disney's story. And so we're talking about Bob Iger. Bob Iger is currently their CEO. Bob Iger was their CEO starting in 2005. Notoriously, Bob Iger has had a hard time finding a succession plan. There were multiple times that he almost left and then didn't leave and then was going to leave and then didn't leave. And then he finally left, and Bob Chapek, who you just referenced, became the CEO there for some number of years before Bob Iger this year came back. Bob Iger is the man who cannot leave his position as Disney CEO. And it's one thing we might get into at the end of this is why and what makes Bob Iger kind of special and, by everyone's account, sort of one of the most remarkable CEOs sort of in media history.
Yeah, love to. And, the thing about the Disney CEO job, it is notoriously one of the most difficult jobs for someone to leave, even with the best laid intentions of, okay, I've been in the job for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it is. It's time for me to retire and move on or do the next thing. Every Bob Iger and every predecessor before him has fought at the end not to leave.
Interesting. Why is that?
It is just a damn awesome job. I have no other way to put it. It is a freaking awesome job. The content is awesome. The theme parks are awesome. The consumers are amazing. The fans are amazing. And the other thing is the type of business challenges. Like if you're the MBA type and a manager type, the kind of business challenges they have to overcome they're not so thorny that they're unsolvable, but they're thorny enough to make your days exciting. And I get it. I get why it's tough to leave that job.
Interesting. Are you gunning for it? You're
I think that
gunning to succeed Iger?
Sadly, I think that day has passed, but if I got the call, I'm ready to serve.
Okay, let's go back to this point about it going through the theme parks. There has been messaging out of Disney and from Chapek specifically, who of course again is no longer CEO, but who was, that suggested their participation in the blockchain was going to be putting Disney Plus front and center of that. And we should talk about that in the context of the VV deal, which is one of the first things they did. And so we'll get to that very shortly. Our favorite topic, John. I'll explain that joke to the audience in a minute.
Get your bulletproof vest on.
Oh boy. And so, but you disagree with that. And you and Julia Alexandra are saying, no, front and center for this should not be Disney Plus. Disney Plus absolutely should be a component of this blockchain theory or, a blockchain activation offering, whatever they do. In the sense that, frankly, everything in Disney should probably be integrated into this in some way or another. But really, the thing that should be front and center are the theme parks. And I think that is understandably counterintuitive to a lot of folks, even Bob Chapek or whoever else, because Disney Plus is a digital thing and this is a digital thing. And doesn't that make sense to do digital and digital? And the integration of something as physical as the theme park might feel counterintuitive. So explain this.
Let's dig a little deeper. So So the reason why Bob Chapek positioned it as Disney Plus is that Disney Plus is a monster investment for the company. They acquired Fox, a $70 billion plus deal to support Disney Plus. And then they acquired BAMTech from Major League Baseball to build Disney Plus. So they're $100 billion into this investment. So I get it. It's like the stock depends on Disney Plus. And so the reason why he positioned it that way is that it was trying to give support to the shares indirectly through supporting Disney Plus, to say that there's going to be more to it in the future. And there absolutely is going to be more. It has a big role to play here, but it's not the place to be building to. It's a component around this bigger idea. I call it the theme park on the blockchain. Where
you said it now. I'm like, this is going to be the title of the episode, right? I mean,
the theme park on the blockchain.
Theme park on the blockchain has got to be the title of the episode.
And there's a couple of reasons why I'm using this example. So the example is, if you think of you walking, you're into a theme park. It could be a Disney park. If you're not experienced with those parks or familiar with them, it could be any amusement park that you're aware of. And you walk in and there's like a main street. There's shops in one area. There's food in another area. There's stories over here, attractions or rides over here. It's a large variety of offerings of experiences. And that's what the blockchain offers. It offers a large variety of experiences that can be around collecting, around community, around commerce and social. And they need to be building in all of those areas. And that's why I like to equate it to a blockchain, because Disney Plus is a streaming platform of storytelling in a one-way direction. And so that's why I think it's bigger than just the Disney Plus model. And it can still support Disney Plus and build on there. In fact, they have to, and that's what we'll talk about next generation storytelling in a minute. But it's bigger, and the opportunities are bigger. A good example is, and this is a very basic low-level example that everyone will choose first, but Disney pin collecting. Like now, the pin collecting business is a nine-figure, at least at one point, was a nine-figure a year business for Disney, $100 million or more. It's probably, I don't know what it is today, but it's probably still somewhere close to that. And what about digital pins, digital NFTs? NFTs can be digital pins that can be traded and moved, and it can accrue value as a collectible, as with rarity and desirability. And so that's the most basic example. But then there's other ways to build on top of this as well in terms of storytelling. So creating original stories and treating them as kind of storytelling publishing through the blockchain. And supporting development of stories on the blockchain. There's a theory around development, entertainment development, that it's takes years, spends millions of dollars to come up with a new story. The Haunted Mansion is an example I gave recently. Disney just released a trailer for the Haunted Mansion movie. That's a project I worked on over 12 years ago. 12 years in development hell to get to the point that it's now ready for release later this year. That is not sustainable. And that's where blockchain can come in a development process. So the application of the technology is both behind the scenes in the business, it's front and forward to the consumer, and it's in many different areas. That's why I love the theme park kind of analogy to it.
Clarify, when just to be clear, when you say that's the role that the blockchain can play in the development process, you mean testing out IP earlier, faster, quicker, getting immediate audience reactions through NFTs before pushing something forward? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So, and we'll in a future episode, we dig deep into development, go a little bit deeper into it. But so right now, when a studio, let's say a Disney or a Universal, wants to acquire a property that will eventually turn into a movie, they're really looking at sources of IP like publishing or games, more so nowadays, that have proven fan bases, have a proven concept or hook that takes less risk out of making a $300 million project. The problem is there's not enough of those around. And frankly, the well is running dry. And so you're not going to have another Harry Potter book to go acquire the rights to and then inherit the whole J.K. Rowling nightmare that goes with that. So you have to find a new source of original IP that can have some sort of testing and proof behind the idea. And it's not going to be Harry Potter level, but it's going to have something there to support it. And that's where I think what blockchain storytelling can really help, because you're beginning to build a community and a fan base around an IP. You're beginning to get confidence that the idea has a hook that might translate well to a film or a show. And so I think it's not going to replace the traditional development process, but it's a way to have another tool in the shed to bring to the table and say, hey, here we can test it here, we can work here, we can learn, and we can build from that. And I think that will greatly, at a much cheaper rate and a much faster rate, be able to develop IP.
That makes sense. And then the other question I had on what you said earlier, I wanted to almost untangle these two things. When you say a theme park on the blockchain, it feels like there's almost two components to that. One is you're describing this Disney universe being built on a blockchain in the way that a theme park is built. You described walking into the theme park and then, you come into the street on the blockchain, and you've got the commerce street and you've got the storytelling street and all the rest of it. So you're making that analogy, but it also sounds like you're saying use NFTs first in these theme parks. Maybe when you buy a pin, you also get the NFT digital twin. Are you saying both things, that the blockchain almost resembles a theme park, and then also that NFT should be rolled out for the theme park before they're rolled out for Disney Plus?
On the latter, no. It's whatever kind of comes to market and makes more sense. It's more about the mental model of we're building a product offering. We're launching a brand new product offering that crosses many different types of media, many different types of engagement, and is going to in some ways be brand new that the company's never participated in. Like, they've never had communities the way that Web3 communities assemble and interact. And really, it's going to be a mindfuck for everyone. Sorry, can I swear like that?
Oh yeah, people know. Sorry guys, if you have kids in the car, I always swear, so I always forget to warn people too.
But it's really going to throw the studios for a loop. I won't swear now. In terms of how they have to engage these communities, because it's going to be a very different level of engagement, a very different timing or sequence of engagement. But again, with architectural innovation, you don't really have a choice. You're going to have to eventually reorganize and adopt to it. So really what I'm saying with the theme park on the blockchain, it's this idea of you're making these offerings across many different aspects and touch points to the consumer. And because it crosses so many areas, mentally, I like to think of it, and I think it's easiest to understand it as it's the theme park on the blockchain. Now, to get a little more granular and specific, in the Disney context alone, or specifically, the Walt Disney Imagineers, in my mind, are probably the best talent at the company to oversee this. Now, they've got Mike White there and his team that's assembling, but it's a very small team. And
explain that for folks. Explain the Mike White news. I remember when that happened, you texted me and calling me and explaining to me what this meant and all the rest of it.
All right. Well, to begin with, who are the Imagineers? If you don't know who Disney's Imagineers are, the Walt Disney Imagineers, or short WDI, the Imagineers are the team of creative talent that develop all of the storytelling and experiences in the theme parks. And so it's a very special and talented group, because they not only have to know storytelling, how to communicate and tell stories and develop original stories and adapt existing stories, but they also have to be deep technologists. Like some of the world's foremost AI researchers, robotics engineers, think of any field of technology, and some of the world's most foremost experts in that space probably work for Walt Disney Imagineering, developing those for park experiences that are even decades to come. And so the reason why I think this project, this initiative, the theme park on the blockchain, is best managed by the Imagineers is not only because of the mental model of the theme park, but also just because the raw technical talent exists within that function, and it doesn't exist anywhere else in the company.
Y'all know I love Ledger, the world leader in critical digital asset security. When you own crypto, what you actually own is a private key that gives you access to your coins. It is imperative that you keep this key safe, and Ledger wallets are the best way to do that. The Nano S Plus and Nano X Ledger wallets, paired with the Ledger Live app, give you the best way to start your crypto journey while maintaining full control over your digital assets. Send and sign your NFT transactions with full transparency in the Ledger Live app. What you see is what you sign. And y'all have heard me talk about Ledger Stacks before. Well, due to unprecedented demand, Ledger has received all the Ledger Stacks pre-orders that it can fulfill through summer 2023. And so they have decided to pause the pre-orders. Ledger is incredibly grateful for the community's support and is working hard to get current pre-orders out and ready to ship so that they can make even more Ledger Stacks to keep your digital assets secure. Sign up for the Ledger Stacks waitlist and be the first to know when Ledger Stacks are available again for pre-orders. But don't leave your digital assets susceptible to breach or hack in the meantime. Order your Nano S Plus or Nano X today by visiting shop.ledger.com or clicking the link in the show notes. So tell us who Mike White is, or what his role is, and what it looks like Disney is doing as of this moment. And I also want to talk and say, what have they done so far?
Yeah, so who I just mentioned Mike White. Who is he? What's this team? So Back in, what was it? It was last summer. February of 2022. So a little over a year now. Disney announced that an existing longtime 10-year, I think, executive of the company named Mike White, who had been over, I believe, in the streaming side of the business, was going to be named to be the head of Disney's quote unquote metaverse efforts. Now they're not using that term anymore, but think of it as their blockchain effort. Not long after, they brought in another executive named Mark Bozon, I believe is his name from Apple Arcade. So he came from the gaming side of Apple to kind of be the number 2 person on that team. That team was positioned in an organization that I don't think exists anymore, and that was the Walt Disney Content Distribution Group, which was led at the time by Kareem Daniels, who was kind of exited out when Bob Chapek left and Bob Iger came in, the 2 Bobs. So we went from one Bob number 1 to Bob number 2. Kareem left with them. So what was important about that group at that time and where it was positioned is, and I thought Disney had gotten it right, was it was part of content distribution. It was part of, which meant that they were looking at it from a storytelling perspective. They weren't looking at it from a deal making, let's do a licensing deal perspective. It's a storytelling platform. So I think they got that right. How it's been reorganized with the transfer from one Bob to another, I don't know yet. We've not heard. Disney has been very quiet since Bob Iger came in about this space and this initiative. My guess is that Disney's kind of focused right now around Disney Plus and some of the challenges they're trying to solve there. And so this isn't probably the front and center shiny penny right now, but every indicator is that they're still building quietly behind the scenes and active. So that's Mike White and his team and kind of where they're operating today. Now, where this all begins for Disney, let's go rewind to fall of 2021, October 21. The first thing we had heard about Disney and Web3 was a partnership with Vivi around a couple of things, a promotion of Disney Plus Day for that later that year, and then a bigger project around kind of Marvel Comics and other Disney content coming to the Vivi platform, which is on Immutable X for anyone, if you're not familiar with it, for digital collectibles, essentially. We kicked off a little bit of controversy a year ago when we talked about that deal. I characterized it as a, quote, schlocky Happy Meal promotion, unquote. And that's not doing Happy Meals much justice. We actually are quite great, but we'll talk about that separately. And here's why. And I want to give full disclosure right now, or at least explanation before I get attacked by the Vivi stands.
Oh, do you want me to? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm laughing. Anybody who's listening, I'm laughing. We obviously alluded to this earlier about buying Bulletproof Vests because we released this like bonus episode. I think it was like December of 21. Like it was, kind of a while ago, and it was pretty early into the tenure of me having this podcast. And, we released this episode in which John called the Disney Vivi deal a schlocky Happy Meal promotion. And oh my gosh, did the Vivi fans come for us? They were so mad and just, wanted to tell us how we knew nothing about what we were talking about. There were some gratifying moments. There were some folks who really came after us and were like, how is this a promotion? None of this is a promotion. And we literally could just send screenshots of the terms and conditions language being like, this is a promotion. This is a promotional deal for Disney Plus. Like it's like literally in the T&Cs on the bottom of like the VV page. And that's kind of a fun way to shut up the trolls, but go ahead.
Yeah, as I say, so let me clarify that. So first of all, for the VV stands out there, I have nothing against the VV platform. I like the VV platform. This is nothing about VV at all. So please put the guns away. This was about what it means from Disney's perspective to do that deal and what it means for the space. And to lead their first real effort in Web3 to make it a buy an NFT and get a Disney Plus subscription really was a bad step forward. It's not the way that you want Disney's very first offerings in Web3, and it's a promotion for Disney Plus.
And what you said in that, and I think it was on me, I was still early in my podcast hosting days, so I don't think I did the best job of shepherding the conversation. But like what you were trying to explain is that there's almost 3 categories of deals that you see. There's a publishing deal, which is if Disney were to Disney publishes their own NFTs with IP that they own. There are these licensing deals where they say, okay, Vivi, you have the right to license these characters and create NFTs with them. People are probably a lot more familiar with licensing now than they were before they entered NFTs because there's lots of different talk about it. And then there's what I would call, for maybe this is wrong, but like kind of the lowest rung on the ladder, which is a promotional deal, which is using your IP or your product to sell something else. And what Disney engaged in with Vivi was a combination of promotional and licensing deals, where they did have some characters that they just licensed to Vivi to issue as NFTs in the Vivi collectibles program. And then they also had some NFTs that were part of this promotional program to promote Disney Plus. And you took issue, I think rightfully, and I'm in your camp, with both being like, Disney should be publishing this themselves. The very first instances of Mickey Mouse on the blockchain should come from Disney rather than engaging in these licensing deals or these promotional deals.
Exactly. And here's one of the reasons why is that what is the very first Mickey Mouse NFT worth? That what I call the superlative value. Well, according to Disney and Vivi, it was worth $50. So for those of you at Vivi on the Vivi platform who collected these, hold them, hold. You got at Disney's mistake, you got the golden ticket, right? Take that elevator into the sky and go, because those are going to be worth a fortune. Disney did not appreciate the superlative value of the first Mickey Mouse NFT, the first Darth Vader NFT, the first R2-D2 NFT. They did not appreciate what they were giving away when they did that deal. For what? You get a month of free Disney Plus for that? Crazy. So that's why I didn't like that deal, because someone at Disney made a big mistake and didn't understand what they were giving away, because they didn't understand the space, because they didn't do the due diligence that they should have to understand the deal that they had gotten themselves into. The other aspect of licensing, I want to make clear, I'm not opposed to licensing NFTs. I just don't think it's what you lead with. Like, I think what Cryptoids are doing with Mattel and He-Man, I love that. That is a home run. I'm all over that. I think that is good licensing. That's extending storytelling, creating interactivity between a brand and the technology. That makes a lot of sense. But the licensing of just give me a quick buck for this collectible that sits on a turntable and spins around and does nothing else and offers nothing else it's not the way. And given how young the space is and these first steps, that's why I'm a fan of publishing first. That's why I think focus on the stories, focus on what people love about this content, and focus on that first and build from there.
Okay, so we have the Vivi deal. We have Mike White getting named. We have Chapek making a statement about immersive or next-gen storytelling. Was that in that mix?
Not in that first. His first statement was about Metaverse, Disney Plus and the Metaverse, and then that shifts a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah. And then we get, in the summer of last year, the Polygon. July of last year, you get Disney is a part of Polygon's a part of Disney's accelerator program. Which way am I going here? Yeah, Polygon. Go ahead. Explain.
So Disney has what they call the Disney Accelerator Program. It's an annual program, so it's a one-year program where numerous companies, usually 5 or 7, are invited to participate through Disney's tech platform or tech teams to basically just work with the Disney teams, showcase their technology. There's like a big showcase event in one of the studios stages at the end of the year where employees are invited to come and just check out basically a booth and learn more about this partner. What it is not is a guarantee of future business, and it's not an exclusive arrangement. So for companies chosen for the program, it's an amazing step into the company for great introductions and learning about what they need. So it's some great competitive intelligence as well, some mentoring and possibly investment as well, but it's not exclusive. And so when this was announced July of last year, the call it the Web3 media publications went crazy, and it was Disney chooses Polygon. That's it. It's done. Polygon's the partner for Disney, and that's not really the relationship. Polygon got an amazing place in this program. It's great for them, but it's not by any means mean that Disney will be building on Polygon exclusively in the future or at all. That's up for Polygon's business dev teams to sell in. And it doesn't mean that there's a guarantee that Disney won't work with other competitors in the space, but that's an ongoing program. They've got a couple months left in it. And
Polygon's BD and marketing team deserve raises. I mean, they really dominated last year. And I think part of that narrative, I don't know this from anything firsthand. My sense is part of that narrative was because Polygon's team did a really good job of kind of pushing the narrative that like this getting into this accelerator program is a sign that Disney is sort of signed on with us.
But it's not just Disney. They signed Starbucks, the Starbucks loyalty program. They signed
of course,
Nike.
Polygon last year.
Yeah,
well, they signed Instagram. R.I.P.
Yeah, but that biz dev team, especially in the media space, just kicked butt last year.
Absolutely.
And we'll see how they execute and how they build on. And in full disclosure, I am working on projects with the Polygon team, so I know them all. But I'm also platform agnostic and have projects on other platforms as well. But yeah, that biz dev team kicked major butt last year.
Absolutely. Okay, let's continue on this timeline and what Disney has done so far, and we'll circle back to sort of under this new Iger era, what does this all mean, and what should they be doing? Next on the timeline, we get the Disney D23 conference and Akutar's appearance at the conference.
Yeah.
Explain what D23 is, the conference. Well,
D23, it's actually started as the fan magazine, the fan club for Disney. And it grew, let's say in 2008, 2009, to become an annual conference. And why this is important for Disney is that while Disney supports Comic-Con and WonderCon, that's a very specific target audience of kind of the fanboy crowd, the fangirl crowd. It's not the broader Disney family audience. And what they found was Comic-Con wasn't really reaching the full fan base of Disney. And so D23 was created at first it was supposed to just augment Comic-Con and create an opportunity for Disney families to get that same kind of exposure to the creators and the content. It has now grown. It's still active today and has grown. And it's now probably the bigger priority. It's absolutely the bigger priority for Disney than Comic-Con is. But it's an annual convention in Anaheim where you get to see the filmmakers, showrunners, actors, and talent come up on stage and present their upcoming content. You get interaction with all the executives. So you can say hi to Bob Iger, previously Bob Chapek, on the floor of the convention, and previously both Bobs together. It's just a great way for the fans to meet the company and vice versa.
And so you have, at that point, at D23 this past year, you had Akutars was there because Visa is a partner of D23 and Akutars is a partner of Visa. And so that was interesting.
Yeah, so technically it's D23 conference presented by Visa.
Okay. Got it.
So as the presenting sponsor of the show, Visa they have an emerging artist program, and they wanted to showcase one of their emerging artists who happened to be Micah from the Akutar team, creator of Akutars. And this was the first time it is the first time that an outside IP had ever been allowed to exhibit within the D23 conference. And it was a Web3 native IP.
I want to talk about that because I think this is really interesting. And there's a lot of NFT projects out there that will say some version of either they want to be the next Disney, or probably some of them in their quieter moments, we'd love to be just like acquired by Disney, right? Help people understand, is Disney going to be acquiring other IP? Like, how does the Disney machine work in terms of creating stories, creating these iconic characters?
Yeah, so Disney is probably not going to acquire IP. I could see them acquiring a studio team, but they're not going to acquire IP just to have that one IP. I've said this before, is that Disney has more brands and IP on the shelf collecting dust than they can ever possibly release in the market. The problem isn't the company's desire or capability to execute on that content. The problem is the distribution to the consumer. The consumer does not have the bandwidth to absorb all of that content. And so they have to make hard decisions every year as to what the priorities are. And there's actually a very formal process in the company where the CEO picks, these are the priority projects for the coming year, and everything else gets kind of put to a secondary or tertiary position. So
that's just fascinating. I just want to see if I understand this right. Like, is this why we just end up with Marvel movies every year and Top Gun again? Like, is it not just that people, I think, want to say like, oh, studios just want to make money, which sounds like it's, of course, I think is a part of this. It's just like, let's just recycle the stuff that we know is going to work and people will show up to the theaters for because theaters are dying. But is there also an element of like, there's only, if people want to be building these franchises, like there's only so much franchise IP that we as consumers like have room for in our hearts and our heads? Is that like sort of what you're getting at? That's definitely part of it. There's only so much that you can absorb, and what are those properties that the audience can absorb. At the same time, it's also capital. So does Disney make a movie or a theme park attraction?
It's about 100 for an e-ticket attraction, like the big attractions. That's $150 million investment per instance. And that's why you see like Haunted Mansion now rebranded to the Guardians of the Galaxy. But that's why you see that at all the parks, because that monster investment to build that at Disney World first had to amortize that, had to be replicated in other places. So it's about application of capital and attention. And so that's the other big issue in the Disney context specifically. That
is there any world where, like, what do you then make the fact that Akutar was exhibited at D23? Is there anything that can be read into that? I mean, we understand why it happened. It's because he's a Visa partner and Mike is a Visa partner and Visa's a partner for this D23 conference. But like, could that mean anything more or flatly not?
Yeah. Well, first of all, for that to be done at D23, that had to be approved. Even though Visa is an important partner and they want to make Visa happy, that still would have had to have been approved at the very highest levels, possibly CEO level even, for that to happen. First IP outside of Disney, a Web3 IP. What I would read into that is that the fact it was a Web3 IP, what that told me is that they were comfortable with IP originating off the blockchain. That they're
the blockchain.
Originating with originating on the blockchain, being a Web3 project, that they were comfortable with that, and displaying that to their consumer in that setting was acceptable, that they're okay with that origin. They're not worried about, say, a scammy reputation of Web3 or kind of any of the negatives that we're all familiar with. But I wouldn't read anything more as like Disney's not going to buy Aku or there's a movie deal imminent. Like, I wouldn't read into that part of it. Just that there's a comfort level there with the source. Okay.
And then just closing the chapter here, it feels like at D23 is where we start to get this next gen storytelling language out of JPEG. And they showed that it was around the same time. What was that? It was going around social media. It was that really cool like AR visual of a Disney movie. It wasn't like a full-fledged movie, right? But where you would have the things coming out of the screen. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was
I remember that.
It was like a forest scene coming out of your TV through AR that came out, I think, during the D23 conference, and some really cool like, immersive storytelling language and then visualizations came out of that period.
Yeah, so there's this transition that happens in the dialogue at that D23 conference, so the September of 2022. And what that is around the metaverse terminology goes away, and all of a sudden next generation storytelling comes in. And now next generation storytelling is a term that's been around, and it's a concept that's been around, but it's the right idea. And what it is you're taking what's inherently a passive viewing experience, me watching a movie on Disney Plus, and you make it somehow interactive. You can interact with the content on the screen. You can make commerce, make purchases while you're watching on the screen with a click of your clicker. You can have social interaction on the screen, say a live chat with friends while you're watching, or not even friends, other fans. It's a way of just making a passive experience interactive. And blockchain plays a major part in enabling this. So what you saw though with the VR part was like another enhancement on top of that, which is, we can make this content VR and you can watch with VR glasses as you're watching that. But their idea is that the Disney Plus platform will do a lot more than just be a passive watching experience. Now, they're still some way away from that, I believe. There's other teams building in that exact same space that are going to come to market maybe within the next 12 months, hint, hint, at what I might be working on. No secret. No, next generation storytelling is exactly where I've been focused my attention the last year, and we have some announcements coming soon. So we'll be the first to market with a next gen product. There's my shameless pumping my own bags.
Oh, yeah, please do.
But that's the idea, that you're turning a passive experience into an interactive one, and it's going to make, from a streaming perspective, think of it. They've got these monster investments in a library, $70 billion for Fox's library. How do you prove more value? So creating interactivity and engagement, opportunities for engagement through classic media that might not have a whole lot of perceived value can all of a sudden have new value found. So it's going to be a thing that's going to be really important to the streamers, I think, going forward.
We talked last episode about some part of the Disney Plus ads platform that they're building out that seems like it might play a role in this next gen storytelling. I can't even remember the details of that. It was only a month ago we talked about this, but
it was an unfortunate way to release this information. It came out of one of the recent conferences around ad sales. So one of Disney's ad sale executives was presenting at this conference, kind of made some comments, whether it was to a member of the media or got picked up by the media. But it was the idea that Disney's platform for ad sales is also capable of doing metaverse ad sales. And so what the takeaway was for the consumer is that what Disney cares about is selling ads to consumers when you're engaging a metaverse experience. It was really the wrong foot forward. It was very unfortunate communication. I don't think someone thought that it was going to get picked up in the media the way it was. I'm probably reading a lot more emphasis into it than it probably got, just because that's me. But it's not what you want to lead. You want to lead with what the consumer experience is first and how good it is. And sorry, but selling me ads in the metaverse is not a good experience.
It's not what you want to hear, right? It's not the PR that the metaverse needs at this point either.
Yeah. And on that note, by the way, it's just a related note. Disney had a job posting around the same time for a metaverse next-gen storytelling comms person.
You're like, yes, this may or may not be a coincidence.
They didn't get that person on board quick enough. That's all I have to say.
That's funny. Okay, let's now go into the Iger era. I want to start with this question, then you can say whatever you want to say about this. Like, do you think so Iger came back at the end of last year, whatever it was. I'm curious about that whole transition in general and like why people felt JPEG was doing, I guess, such a bad job that he needed to be replaced by the old guard. But my question more specifically is, do you think one or the other is better for Web3 or for the metaverse, call it, like between Iger and JPEG? Do you think one is more sympathetic or pro it than the other?
No, I don't think one is more pro than the other. I think they're both engaged, on board, supportive, and we're building in that space. I think JPEG would move faster, just out of a sheer probable need to try to show some change or improvement at Disney Plus, because that's kind of where he was going. So I think JPEG would have moved faster. I think Iger is probably moving slower in the near term. Iger has to obviously focus on executive transition, that he's only got 20 months left on his contract and they have to resolve that very quickly. He has to think about the current financial situation of Disney Plus, the strategic issues around ESPN and Hulu. So I just think Iger is going to take a little bit slower road around Web3 than JPEG would have.
Iger made some headlines after he had retired because he was on the board of Genies, which is
an investor too. He's
an investor and on the board of Genies. I mean, Genies is one of those kind of funny things. I feel like it's been in beta now for it feels like a long time. I know I haven't looked at it actually recently, but last I had checked, which was probably a couple months ago, like they were still accepting applications for like designers who want to design clothes and like kind of be a part of the marketplace for these avatars, but they still hadn't actually really like opened things up yet. I don't know if you have any takes on Genies or Iger's involvement there or what any of that meant.
Yeah, a couple of things. I don't know much about Genies as a company and what the product they're building. It's been very quiet. They raised a ton of money.
Oh my God, they raised $150 million.
Oh my.
According to TechCrunch.
They probably raised more than they should have.
Oh my gosh. Genies, an LA-based digital avatar startup, announced Tuesday that it had raised $150 million in funding from Silver Lake with participation from others. The round was first reported by DealBook, and it follows a $65 million Series B raised last May. So this came out in 22, right? So a year ago, they raised $150 million, and the year prior, they'd raised $65 million. So they've raised over $200 million just in their Series B and Series C. Your face. For anyone who's not watching on YouTube.
When Quibi came around, I don't want to make that association of the two, but the one thing I'll give Jeffrey Katzenberg credit at Quibi, and I was among the most vocal critics of Quibi, so I will own that.
Give yourself credit for that too.
I will give Katzenberg credit that when they realized it wasn't going to work, they gave the money back. And I give him all the credit in the world for that, because I've never seen a founder do that before. And
interesting.
When you raise $200 million in 2 rounds, is that you've overraised, right?
I mean, yeah, you're talking about needing some really serious valuations for your investors and employees and everybody not just be underwater on that in time. I mean, whew.
But I think the more important takeaway of Iger investing and taking a board seat at Genies is that Iger, if I had any criticism of Iger's career, and Iger, I believe, is the most successful media executive of the last 30 years, no doubt. but he's not perfect. He has weak spots. And if I believe there's any one weak spot, it's in digital transformation. He sold off the Disney Games Group at just the time he should have been investing in the Games Group. He's never been particularly strong in the space. And I think his investment in that, he even had a statement where he was interested in disruptive technology for disruptive purposes. I think that's where he was going to go in his retirement, is focus in that area. So I don't know what he's going to do at Disney now that he's back, but I think it's an area that he probably knows he needs to put a little more emphasis on.
His disruptive technology retirement got disrupted. Oh,
it did.
So you were saying to me, and I'm like, you think maybe the fact that he has actually been weaker in digital, to your mind, could be a positive, because you think he maybe on some level knows that and has a little something to prove on the digital side. And, he's also, I mean, he's in his 70s, right? Like, he is an older CEO. So I wonder to some extent if there's also an element of like, I mean, maybe this is me wishful thinking as somebody who's like obviously pro Web3, but like twisting this to be like, he might be very favorable to Web3 in part because he wants to show that he can kind of keep up with the kids. I don't know. I mean, I don't know, Iger. That feels like I'm imposing a lot of insecurity on a man who is probably very secure. So, but you did make a comment around those lines.
Yeah, no, he's obviously very, very confident and secure. But I'm sure he doesn't like, if he were ever to listen to this podcast, he would not like that I said if he has any one weakness, it's in digital. So that's purely my opinion. But I do think that there's some work to be done there.
Let me ask you this. The focus right now for Disney, I mean, there's obviously Disney is just this mammoth company. There's so much happening in so many places. We've mentioned Disney Plus is obviously a huge focus for them. And then it also seems like the parks is a really big focus for Iger, because there's a lot of talk about like the problem with the parks. And I'm just curious, honestly, as somebody who's interested in Disney, as to what's gone wrong with the parks. I'm also confused because Chapek was running parks before he became the CEO. So I'm confused why he like seemed to screw up the parks so much when that seems to have been an area that should have been a specialty of his. So why was Chapek ousted? What was he doing wrong? And what is having to be cleaned up right now about the parks and or Disney Plus?
Well, I just got back from a Disneyland vacation with my daughter. And so it's fresh. The experience is fresh in my mind. What I would say what has gone wrong at the parks is the perception of value. That the perception that wealthy people can get ahead of people who don't have the same kind of resources, and you can buy experiences or buy your way to the front of the line, a fast pass in certain attractions. Every time I've ever visited Disney in the past, you walk out the door at the end of the day thinking, "Wow, I spent a lot of money today." But this was the first time I ever walked in thinking, "God, I spent a lot of money today, and it's just starting." And so there's just this perception of nickel and diming that I absolutely felt when I was there. That just, how much do you really need to charge for a churro? How much does that really have to be? Do I really have to pay to get in the Lightning Lane for the Star Wars attraction or Cars? Can't it just be a randomized lottery? Like, why do people get to pay to do that? And it's just little decisions like that added up, and over time, the value proposition, even though it's sold out, there's not enough supply for the demand. The value proposition has kind of gone away. And Iger just made a statement the last week about that the Disney experience needs to be accessible to all incomes. That it's not just a charge what you can because the market will bear. It's really the importance of it to the brand. And if you start making it the brand for only wealthy people, the foundation will start to decay, and eventually it's weak.
That was going to be my question, is what has Iger said on that? That's really interesting. Was that the reason that Iger was able to sort of, I don't know, I don't want to say oust Chapek. I don't know how much Iger was lobbying for it or not, though I think some people think he was heavily lobbying. But like, why was Chapek kind of kicked out?
Yeah, I don't think the displeasure among the park fans was really the reason. It's a combination of just an accumulation of factors: loss of confidence in the Hollywood community, loss of confidence in his senior executive team, the unhappiness among the parks, the Disney Plus situation.
What's the situation for Disney Plus?
Well, just that the service isn't growing the way it used to. That they Iger very wisely underestimated the growth of Disney Plus, which they gave them a target that they could then overdo. And Chapek kind of overstated the growth potential and they under hit. So they didn't hit their numbers.
Is that partly a COVID problem though, where, it grew so much faster than anybody anticipated in COVID? And this is what a lot of companies did. Peloton, I mean, you could go down the list, right? That kind of said, okay, the growth we're seeing in COVID, yeah, maybe it'll slow a little bit, but it'll just continue. It's a new world order.
Yeah, I believe those projections were actually pre-COVID.
Oh my God, they didn't hit the project.
What they did is they when Chapek became the CEO, he probably gave what the real numbers were, because Iger was undershooting the numbers. He gave what the real numbers were, and it gave him a big pop. Like, it's like, oh, the new CEO just popped the stock. But then he kind of eliminated all of his wiggle room or headroom to work in the future. Yeah.
Oh,
so I think, but the end of the road for him was an analyst's call that went really off the rails. And he was gone within days after that analyst call.
And what went wrong?
The numbers, they missed the numbers. And rather than coming into the call with a very just straight shooter, hit right to the bad news, because the press release comes out ahead of time. So all the analysts on the call knew what the bad news was, and they were ready to talk about it. And rather than coming out as a straight shooter, like, yep, we hit our numbers this quarter, here's what's happened, here's what we're doing to address it, he came out and started talking about, hey, if the Oogie Boogie band at Disneyland was great last night. And it's like, oh yeah, we got this problem with the numbers over here, but we'll address that later. And so he just didn't get the analyst community, how to work with them. And to be fair to him, they probably never quite warmed to him, and he never quite warmed to them, where Iger has always just had an amazing relationship with analysts and investors.
That's interesting. Well, growing up, that was usually what my grandmother would give me for Christmas. And I should say, like, this was not like, she was a very working class woman, but she would give me Disney stock. And so I do not have much Disney stock relative to now being an adult who buys a bunch of other stuff, but I have accumulated a fair bit of Disney stock in my life. Thanks to my grandmother, who used to gift that to me all the time. So as a Disney shareholder, I'm glad to hear that Iger's back and cleaning the place up. Let's close here. I know we only have a couple minutes left. You've given a lot of, I would say, prescriptive advice throughout this that, I agree with, because I think you get these two worlds better than just about anybody I've encountered. Any kind of last pieces of advice you would give, or thoughts you have about the direction that Iger's going, or I mean, what the succession plan might be, if it sounds like will Iger try and stick around? I mean, how old is he? 70? What's he? How old is he?
He's in his 70s.
I mean, look, it's half of Congress is also in their 70s. So these people, maybe he works until he's 95, but it is the thinking that he's going to stick around past these next 20 months, or is he leaving?
No, I think he's done. I think he'll go. I mean, he'll never truly, he'll be there to support whoever comes in behind him and be a mentor. But I think he means it. I think he means that he moves on. He's going to move on with his retirement. It feels like Tom
Brady's retirement. You're like, just do it already, y'all. Like, you know what I mean? Stop with this. Stop with these games.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, give us your closing thoughts.
Yeah. So I would just say I think he'll move on as he says he will. He'll always be there to be a board member, board advisor at least, and work with the company. But he's going to do some cleanup and then move on. But for kind of what I would, if I had his ear, like what would I say to him in this context, this area? I'd tell him a couple things. I'd say time to clear the market. Like, you've done some toe in the water tests with Web3. You're going to hopefully get ready for a big theme park on the blockchain push. So let the contracts that you have in place wind themselves down. I'm sure they probably have a time limit on them. But it's time to think about clearing the market to get ready for the big push. And don't take on any more ad hoc little projects here and there. Like, clear the market. Just get ready for the big launch. And then take your time. No need to rush. Obviously, it's a bear market right now. So take your time and just get all of the pieces in place. So when you do launch, it's a really big initiative.
I love your advice. How optimistic or not are you that they will move in that direction?
30%.
Okay, it's not great.
I obviously, since I'm not inside and in the meetings, I don't know what they're planning. I know what I would do if I were there and tell them. And
yeah.
I'd be looking to build this big effort, make it a layer 3, a Disney owned layer 3 that called the Disney Magic Chain, or perhaps fork a layer 2, but make it an EVM equivalent, right? Build on Ethereum.
Yeah.
And build really something that Disney can own and control and have that great experience for its consumers, but also gives the flexibility that should a consumer want to move an asset off of the Disney Magic chain to Ethereum Layer 1, yeah, go to it. If you know what you're doing, go to it. Feel free. So definitely have that flexibility. And I would absolutely be focusing on a identity solution. I love the Nike.swoosh platform. Where is my Disney.magic identity? I want John at Disney.magic now. And let that be my unified Web3 Disney identity. Build a wallet. They're going to have to solve the crypto wallet problem for assets, and we'll call it the Disney Vault. They're already set up for success in that regard, the Disney Vault, and start building that base infrastructure that will kind of support this big chain.
I love it. I'm so on board. And you're totally right. I mean, you mentioned the pins at the top of the show. For folks who don't know, when you go to Disney parks, you can buy these pins and you get this kind of like lanyard that you put all these pins on. And I've never been a collector throughout my life. I've never been a big collector. And that was the one thing. I had relatives who lived in Orlando. So you can imagine I spent a lot of time in Orlando, and that meant Disney. And I loved collecting those dang pins, man. I really did. And so it doesn't surprise me that's a $100 million business, but you're right. Like, digitize that whole thing, put it on your special Disney branded blockchain with your Disney ID, all your loyalty points accrue, you get benefits. And this is, I'm so excited about like I talk about this on the show, right? But this like Web3 as this tool to cross mediums, right? So it's in the parks, you can then extend it to Disney Plus, you can integrate everything now on this digital identity layer and using NFTs in a way that I think is really, really interesting. And
one last point on that note is, like, okay, so how do they do the storytelling? How do they create new storytelling in here? And so one last thing I would kind of be prescriptive about is look at the different creative teams in the company. So I'm talking Kevin Feige's team at Marvel, Dave Filoni's team at Lucasfilm, Sean Bailey's team at the Disney Studio. Put a Web3 expert in development on those teams so that they have the view of how can we take this upcoming film and think about it in the sense of Web3, and how can we start building for that from the ground floor, from the first day. Either that or work with some of these Web3 studios, like do a first look deal with a company like Feature. There's not a whole lot of them, but do a first look. They're cheap deals by the context of Disney or Universal, and get those teams to start bringing you ideas and bring you expertise and be someone you can call, and just to get your first steps moving. And no one has yet made that first step at any of the studios. And I think Disney should be the first, set a flag out there that everyone can march to, and be the first to do a deal like that would be, I think, a really smart move.
John, thank you so much for being here. Amazing as always. And I look forward to the next episode of Blockbuster.
Yeah, about a month. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Overpriced JPEGs. If you liked this conversation, if you liked this episode, please go ahead and hit subscribe. It helps me out, it helps the show out, and it means you will get alerts and updates when we post new content. Thanks again.